Hello, my name is Zoe Powers, and this all started with that dam splashing at the crack of dawn, right around 6:45 in the morning, pulling me straight out of bed like some rude alarm clock I never set. I stumbled to the window, still half asleep, and there they were, two little heads bobbing in my backyard pool, laughing like it was their own private splash pad. I'd only moved into this quiet spot on Oak Lane a few months ago. I'd poured my savings into buying a place that finally had what I always dreamed of, a pool. After years of long nights coding at the office, building systems, and solving other people's problems, I wanted something for me. A little oasis. Peace. Quiet. Maybe even some solitude. Before we go any further, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing how far this little story can travel. Let's make this space feel a little more connected, no matter how many miles are between us. But apparently, my idea of quiet didn't match my neighbors. Lisa Hartman and her kids, Sophie and Jake, had decided from day one that my backyard was a community water park. No knock on the door. No, hey, mind if they dip in? Just straight up entitlement, like the fence didn't exist or didn't apply to them. At first, I tried to play it cool. I'd peek out the kitchen window and politely ask them to go home, watching Sophie, 8 years old with her wild curls, splash around while Jake, 10 and bursting with energy, cannonballed like he owned the place. Lisa never came out right away. Instead, she'd crack open her own kitchen window and call out lazily, "It's okay, I said you can play, but do be nice," like that somehow solved everything. I'd step outside, voice raised, not yelling, just firm enough to be heard over the chaos, and ask them to leave. But they'd either ignore me completely or stick out their tongues, shouting, "My mom said I could," before running off like it was a game. Only then would Lisa finally come stomping over, not to collect her kids or apologize, but to yell at me. Like I was the problem for daring to speak up in my own yard, and I'd say something like, "Lisa, this is the 3rd time this week. They can't just hop in without asking." She'd whip around, eyes flashing that mix of annoyance and superiority, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Oh, come on, Zoe. They're just kids letting off steam. Back in my day, neighbors shared everything. It's what builds a community, you know." One day, I posted a clear, polite sign, "Private property, no trespassing." Next morning, I found it torn down and floating in the pool, warped and waterlogged, tossed in like it was a joke. "Besides," she said once, smirking, "you're at work all day. That pool's just sitting there lonely." Lonely. It stung. Because yeah, I was single, grinding 60-hour weeks to afford this house after my divorce. But that didn't make my backyard her family's playground. Deep down, it wasn't just the trespassing. It was the way she made me feel like the bad guy for setting boundaries. Like protecting what I'd worked for made me selfish, while she paraded this community-first vibe that really meant my kids get what they want. One afternoon, I was reviewing some footage from my backyard security cameras, just checking things over, trying to decide how much more I could tolerate, when I saw it again. Jake, climbing the slippery edge of the pool. Jake, running across the wet deck at full speed. Jake, balancing on the railing like it was a tightrope. Each clip made my stomach twist tighter. It wasn't just disrespect anymore, it was dangerous. And if something happened to him on my property, I knew exactly who she'd blame. Just as I was watching the most recent clip, Jake nearly falling backward into the concrete, I heard the telltale creak of the little gate in my fence. They were back. Again. Lisa and the kids strolled through like they had every right to, towels in hand, already mid-laugh. I stood up from the kitchen table, grabbed my phone, and walked out to meet her, calm but serious. I caught her just before she reached the pool steps. "Hey Lisa," I said, keeping my tone measured. "Can I show you something real quick? I've got a recording from the other day, and honestly, I found it kind of troubling. Jake nearly hurt himself pretty badly, and I thought you should see it." I pulled out my phone, ready to play the clip of Jake slipping off the pool railing. But Lisa didn't even glance at the screen. Her expression twisted instantly. "You've been recording my children," she snapped, her voice sharp. Before I could even finish explaining, she spun on her heel and sprinted toward the pool. "Get out! Get out of the pool," she shrieked. Then, at full volume, for the entire neighborhood to hear, this pervert is recording children. Everything froze. The splashing. The laughter. Me. The words rang through the air like a siren. The kids stopped mid-dip, their eyes wide as she yanked them out of the water, dragging them back through the gate, muttering under her breath about police and privacy and sickos. I stood there in stunned silence, pulse thudding in my ears. Curtains twitched. A neighbor's dog barked once, then went quiet. And then, slowly, I realized I wasn't entirely alone. From the porch across the back alley, Mrs. Delgado sat watching, one hand around a steaming mug, the other resting on her lap. She raised an eyebrow as our eyes met, then gave me a look that said, "Don't take it personally." Still rattled, I walked over, phone still in hand. I don't record kids," I said quietly. "I just have security cameras. Standard stuff, motion triggered." I wasn't spying. I was trying to keep Jake safe. He almost really hurt himself. She gave me a calm, knowing nod. "Oh, honey," she said, setting her mug down with a soft clink. "You don't need to explain. Everyone knows what Lisa's like." I blinked. "They do." Mrs. Delgado sighed. "The last guy who lived here. He was a quiet single man, too. Bought the house thinking it'd be peaceful. She pushed and poked until he couldn't take it anymore. He sold the house and left in under 6 months. She ran him off?" I asked. She tried. Like she tries with everyone she can't control. "You're not the first. You won't be the last." She gave me a pointed look. "Don't let her turn this around on you. We've seen this show before." Something inside me exhaled. I didn't feel okay, not yet, but I felt a little less alone. Because for the first time, I realized Lisa's chaos wasn't just targeting me. It was a pattern. And I wasn't going to be the next one she drove out. That same evening, after the yard had gone quiet and the sun dipped low behind the rooftops, I walked out to the little gate connecting our properties, the one her kids breezed through like it was a revolving door. I stood there for a minute, just looking at it, hands in my pockets, thinking about all the times they'd passed through without permission. Then I went to the garage, pulled out my toolkit, and installed a lock. Nothing fancy, just something simple but firm. A keyed latch from my side only. No more accidental visits. No more, "We thought it was okay." As I tightened the final screw, I felt a kind of click inside me, like the lock had sealed more than just the gate. It sealed a boundary. One I should have drawn from day one. When I stepped back and looked at the closed, locked gate, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. After that blow-up, I had 2 days of peace. Blissful, unsettling peace. No gate swinging open, no splashing sounds, no candy wrappers drifting across the water. Just the quiet hum of the neighborhood and the sound of my own breathing, finally steady. Then my boss called. There was a tech conference in the city. Big names. Big exposure. And he wanted me there in person. It was short notice, but important. Just 2 days. I packed light. The morning I was set to leave, I wheeled my suitcase down the driveway, double-checking that everything was locked: doors, windows, and of course, that newly secured gate. As I stood at the curb waiting for my Uber, I glanced over at Lisa's house. She was standing by her window, staring at me. No wave. No expression. Just watching. I felt a ripple of unease move through my chest, like a thread being pulled. Something about the way she stood there, motionless, gave me that old, familiar twist in my stomach. But then I thought about my gate, the new lock, gleaming in the morning light, and reassured myself. She couldn't get in. Not anymore. Still, as I climbed into the back seat of the car and the driver pulled away, I couldn't shake the feeling. Something about the way she watched me go felt like a warning. The conference was a blast. Everyone in the industry was there, colleagues I admired, brilliant newcomers, panels packed with tech revelations, and coffee that never ran out. Somewhere between the rooftop mixer and the closing keynote, it was decided, when we got home, I'd host a little pool party for the team. Jen offered to make the food. John volunteered to bring the mixers, ice, and 2 cases of different beers. Everyone else could be whatever. It felt spontaneous and fun, and honestly, I was excited to finally enjoy my space with people who respected it. By the time I got back, I was tired but buzzing, suitcase in one hand, a mental checklist already forming for party prep. As I stepped into the house, the stillness hit me. No splashing. No shouting. Just the soft hum of my fridge and the thunk of my suitcase wheels on hardwood. Then I glanced out the back window. And froze. My heart sank. It looked like the aftermath of a parade. Soggy paper plates, deflated balloons tangled in the fence, cupcake wrappers, confetti stuck to the wet deck. Some of the pool toys weren't even mine. There was an abandoned cooler half full of melted ice and someone's leftover sunat still hanging from a chair. I walked straight to my desk, pulled up the security footage, and hit play. What I saw made my blood boil. First, a figure rattling the gate, testing it. Then, just a few moments later, a hedge trimmer blade, working through the lock like some twisted DIY crime. Sparks. Grinding. Metals shearing off. Then came Lisa. Calm as ever. Screwdriver in hand, removing what was left of the hardware like she was fixing a kitchen drawer. And once it was gone, she just walked in and set up a birthday party for Sophie. I watched in stunned silence as folding tables were carried in, kids ran laughing around the pool, adults chatted over platters of snacks and juice boxes. At least a dozen kids, maybe 20 adults, like it was a neighborhood event. Not one face looked like they thought they were somewhere they shouldn't be. They just took it. My yard. My pool. My space. I sat back, watching the footage, stunned, then furious. But I didn't have time for a meltdown. My people were coming over. My party. My turn. So I saved the footage, every second of it, backed it up twice, and started cleaning. Every wet napkin, every juice box, every last pink balloon from a party I had never been invited to. The night was going nicely. Bob had taken over the grill, flipping burgers like a pro. The smell of char and seasoning filled the air, mixing perfectly with the laughter and music coming from the Bluetooth speaker near the deck. Jen had gone all out with the food, trays of hors d'oeuvres, plus big bowls of macaroni salad, potato salad, and coleslaw. Her sister runs a catering company, so she knew exactly what to bring to make it look and taste like a professionally planned event. It felt relaxed, fun. Like mine. Greg was over by the patio table, casually lighting up a joint, legal stuff, nothing sketchy, something he said he'd grabbed from the dispensary next to the liquor store while his wife picked up a couple bottles of wine. It finally felt like my home was being used the way I'd imagined when I bought the place. No drama. No uninvited cannonballs. Just friends, food, and sunshine melting into evening. Then the gate creaked open. I turned my head and felt my stomach drop. Sophie and Jake came walking in, dripping with confidence and chlorine-slicked hair like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Right behind them was Lisa, holding a towel and chatting on her phone like this was just any other weekend. I set my drink down and stepped forward. "Not tonight, Lisa," I said, firm but calm. "I've got a few friends over." She blinked like she hadn't heard me, then slowly lowered her phone and took in the scene, the food, the people, the laughter. Her eyes focusing in on Greg. "You're having a party?" she asked, like it was some personal betrayal. "Yes," I replied, keeping my voice even. "And you're not invited. Please go." Her face flashed with something, shock, disbelief, maybe a touch of humiliation. The kids looked confused, tugging at her arm. But after a tense beat, she turned and left without a word, her jaw tight, dragging them back out the gate. I let out a breath and walked back to the grill. Bob handed me a burger like nothing had happened. I told myself that was the end of it. Just one awkward moment. I'd talk to her tomorrow. But deep down, I knew better. About 45 minutes later, just as the sun dipped low and the patio lights flicked on, the music cut off, not because anyone turned it down, but because everyone froze. A police officer and a social worker had just walked into my backyard. No knock. No call. Just straight through the gate like it was still public property. The officer held up a hand. "We received a report of loud music and possible drug use around minors." My guests glanced at each other wide-eyed. The music had been just loud enough to carry faintly through the fence, nothing outrageous, and the only drug in sight was Greg's legally purchased weed, far from any children, because there were no children here. Then the social worker spoke, already trying to make her way to the back door. "I just need to step inside and see that the children are safe." I stepped in front of her. "You can't enter my house without a warrant." She gave me a calm, practiced smile. "I'm not searching, I just need to make sure the children are okay." I stared at her, deadpan. "What children?" She blinked. For a few seconds, we stood there in confusion, both of us caught in some bizarre standoff, until Lisa came running from the sidewalk, tears streaming down her cheeks, sobbing like it was opening night on a soap opera. She yelled at me and my children, she wailed. Jake was offered drugs. And Sophia, someone tried to give her an alcoholic beverage. There was a long pause. Then I laughed. Like, really laughed. A full body, bent over, can't catch my breath laugh. The kind that turns heads and silences conversations. Everyone stared. Bob stepped forward awkwardly and said, that woman tried to crash the party earlier. Zoe told her to leave. Politely. Still wiping tears from my eyes, I turned to the officer and social worker. "Please, come with me." I led them into the house and pulled up my security feed. First, the footage from earlier that evening, Lisa entering the yard uninvited, me stepping forward, clearly saying, "Not tonight." Her frown. Her retreat. The officer and social worker exchanged glances. "Before you go," I said, clicking open another folder. "There's more you might want to see." Then I played the footage from when I was out of town. The sawed-off lock. The screwdriver. Lisa organizing a birthday party in my backyard for over 30 people while I was gone. They watched in silence. I didn't even need to say a word. Finally, the officer looked at me. "Do you want to press charges?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. Out on the lawn, the mood had shifted. Lisa stood on the curb watching us, arms crossed and lips pursued until the officer approached her, cuffs in hand. The color drained from her face. "What?" No, I'm the victim," she shrieked. But it was too late. She was arrested right there in front of my house, in full view of half the block. Neighbors peeked from porches. Mrs. Delgado across the street muttered, "Took long enough," and went back to her crossword. As the cruiser pulled away, I returned to the backyard where my guests had quietly resumed the party, albeit now with the sort of buzz only justice can bring. I picked up my drink, raised it, and said, "To boundaries." Everyone laughed. And for the first time since I moved in, my home finally felt like mine. Lisa was officially charged with trespassing, breaking and entering, and filing a false report. Turns out, this wasn't her first rodeo. She had made so many bogus complaints about the previous owner, a quiet guy who just wanted to enjoy his retirement, that the local police were already well acquainted with her antics. Her false reports had tied up officers, social workers, and city inspectors more times than anyone could count. They were done with her. When the truth finally came out, footage, witnesses, timestamps, it was like pulling a thread that unraveled years of manipulation. Her ex-husband jumped on the opportunity. He filed for full custody of Sophie and Jake, citing the criminal charges and the mountain of neighbor complaints. He won. Lisa was sentenced to 1 year probation as a first-time offender. No jail time, but a court record. A label. And a loud, clear message that her reign of suburban chaos had come to an end. She moved out not long after, quietly, without her usual fanfare. One morning, I looked out the window and saw the for sale sign, the windows dark. No kids. No yelling. Just silence. And I had the gate removed entirely. Not locked. Not replaced. Gone. The opening was filled in with new fence boards, freshly stained, seamless. No trace of where that access point had been. No more gray area. No more crossing lines. The next month was blissfully peaceful. The neighborhood, seemingly united in shared relief, organized a block party. Tom fired up his smoker. Mrs. Jenkins made her legendary peach cobbler. Jen brought fancy little tartlets, courtesy of her sister's catering company, and even Greg showed up with his Bluetooth speaker and a six-pack of gourmet root beer. It was the first time I felt like I belonged on the street. No tension. No walking on eggshells. Just community. And control. Exactly how I wanted it. And that's how I took back my home and my peace, one boundary at a time. If you've ever dealt with a nightmare neighbor, someone who doesn't respect your space, or who twists the truth to make you the bad guy, you're not alone. If you've been through it and come out the other side, share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you stood your ground. And if you're in the middle of it right now, stay calm, document everything, and protect your boundaries. You have every right to feel safe and respected in your own space. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories, quiet victories, and the occasional petty but justified revenge. Stay safe out there, and remember, no is a full sentence. And a locked gate? Even better.